Welcome back to Free Founders, where we share actionable lessons from the world's best solopreneurs and small business owners. This is for aspiring entrepreneurs who want proven strategies to go from zero to first sale and onwards to scale and enjoy the freedom that comes along with it. My guest today is Cecilia Razak. She has run 2 highly successful startups and seems to me to have been a real serial entrepreneur since university/college. She's got a lot to teach us about resilience and entrepreneurial thinking. Let's jump in. And thank you, Cecilia, for joining. You run a company called SpotWalk for 7 years. You get it to $1 million annual recurring revenue. COVID hits, revenue drops 70% in 3 weeks. The business is in trouble and you have to let go 100 team members, right? Mainly pet caregivers. How did you handle that? How did you pick yourself up from that?
Yeah, it was a crazy experience. We, in March of 2020, we were slated to hit $1 million ARR by the end of the year. It was a mid-case projection. And it was looking pretty good. We were actually having an all-hands meeting first week of March 2020, where we were having everybody come in from our different cities. And we were just kind of doing a big, like, look how great everybody's doing. Look how wonderful this is going. And I remember having those planning sessions before everybody came in with my co-founder. And we were discussing, should we mention this COVID-19 thing that's going on? And we decided, well, we'll give it a passing mention. It's not going to make really a big difference. And that was on Monday. And then by Friday, the end of the all hands week, everything had shut down. And we were worried even that like our city managers weren't going to get back home, like, because the trains weren't running. Like, that was the level of change from Monday to Friday. And it was jarring and like surprising. And in the beginning, it was kind of a slow fade because, quarantine was supposed to last 2 weeks. And we were like, okay, well, we'll be on a call for 2 weeks. And then we went totally remote in terms of a core team. Like, we were working in office and everybody had to go remote, obviously. And that lasted way longer than 2 weeks. In fact, it lasted 2 years. We didn't think it was going to change the face of our industry, but it definitely did. And to the point where that business was no longer really viable. I mean, we could have kept going with it. We were still doing acceptable revenue. But it wasn't a thing that was going to be kind of this large company, the rocket ship growth that we had wanted. And so we made the decision to pivot out of that particular tech platform into sort of a different revenue model. And in some ways, some of the silver linings were that we were able to have some downtime where we weren't focusing on the growth of this company to start something new, which is what we're doing now.
I don't even want to talk about COVID because what a shit period. Even worse in your case, but it's very interesting that I've spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs, and there's a good 30% who, because of that space that COVID gave, because it paused the existing business, whether it was consulting or a full-time startup, gave that space to then sort of rethink and forced a direction change.
Yes.
So long-term positive, but obviously short-term negative. How many people get into entrepreneurship because of this desire to take control, right? We take control over our own lives in a way. Was it particularly hard, something that was just so out of your control there? You're doing everything right up until then, and then black swan event, something completely out of the blue comes along. Like, how did you, what was your, inner narrative in terms of picking yourself up, and then we'll talk about the pivot and the new business, but restarting after that?
Yeah. It was one of those kind of unplannable situations, and we planned for a lot. When you make when you're raising rounds and you're making these documents that you're sharing, you put in like, here are our high risk spaces. Like, here are the things that could bring this company down. full disclosure, like this could, we could get sued for something, like that sort of stuff. But like, what are the likely things that could go wrong here? And we had a list, 15 of those that were possible. And we had like, here are what we're doing to mitigate each of these things. And I got to tell you, a global pandemic was not on the list. So we ended up just in a place where we're like, this has completely changed the total addressable market that exists, which is not a thing that we had predicted, and that makes it hard to address the market because it's just so much smaller, and it, as you say, it was completely out of our control, and in a way that was, you can look at it as freeing because we didn't do anything wrong. There was nothing that we were like, oh, well, we really should have planned for that nuclear explosion that happened 3,000 miles away from it. Like, there's nothing that we could have done to make that better for us as individuals. And that kind of outlook for me was helpful, where it was like, well, you did everything. You had all the information that you had, and you did the best with the information that was available then. You have new information now. You can't do anything about what's happened. How do we move forward? What do we do with the new information? And I think that's really the only way to kind of roll with it.
Yeah, I mean, I like how you just took a data-driven approach, data-informed, let's say, and rather than just going like the world's ending and as in our own world, right, the business is done. You go, okay, the market has basically shifted. What do we now do? Like, what does our business model look like based on the new information, based on the new market that exists, and then how do we go from there? Did you think about giving up on entrepreneurship after that experience? Like, what helped you sort of pick yourself up and start again?
Yeah. I mean, I regularly think about changing. I would never call it giving up. I would say that the way to approach it that's the most helpful is, does this align with the bigger picture of what I want my life to look like? If it doesn't, what changes do I make? I think that it's very, very important, and I think it's a skill set that is in our culture, Western culture, we don't do a lot, where, stepping back and looking at, like, what are my large picture goals here? What are the things in my life that I value? What are the things that are important to me? How do I shape my life around it? And I've been very lucky and have had a lot of privilege to have sort of the space to take time to look for that and to shape my own life. I've had a lot of privilege being able to have the resources to shape my life the way that I would like to do it. And so for me, entrepreneurship is one of the ways. Probably there are others, but it's been the way that I've chosen to have the most control over that sort of output of my life. Like, what do I think is important and valuable in the world? What do I want to add to the world? And it's hard to do that with the amount of control that I like when you're working for other people. So I decided maybe I wanted to work for myself so that I could do whatever I wanted, basically. And it takes a lot of support, and it takes a lot of luck, and it takes a lot of help to be able to do that. And I feel very lucky to have it.
You said, I mean, you're using privilege and luck, but it seems to me that I imagine you work pretty hard for it, but also I see a threat. Even
you need both. You can have all the world if you don't do anything.
Yeah. How did you proactively cultivate conditions to sort of set your, for example, even in college, for university, for us in the UK, you were doing these side jobs, right? Local paper, radio. So that strikes me as very proactive. How do you think those experiences sort of set you up for later success, maybe, if at all?
Yeah. I think it's I'm interested. I'm engaged. I'd like to know things, and I'd like to sort of be a participant in the world. I think it's important to learn and grow. I think if you're sitting doing nothing, then life is a little bit less fun, unless, that's what's fun for you. For me, I like it. And I think a lot of those activities, I was did a radio show at my college, and I was the editor of our newspaper, the editor of our arts section at Washington University in St. Louis newspaper. And I just really enjoyed that. I like media. I like talking around media. So it was fun. It wasn't sort of mindfully proactive. It was sort of just like, what are things that I want to be involved in, and how do I make those fun for myself?
Do you think that informed going into entrepreneurship later, or anything that was sort of more formative along that journey?
Yeah, I think a lot of those things do, because the more things you do, the more systems that you get involved with, the more you learn how they work. And I think entrepreneurship is one of the more graspable ways to understand a large system, because in order to run a business that works, you need to not only understand the business itself, you need to understand the people using the business, you need to understand the larger world that the business is operating in, what the market is doing. And a lot of that systems understanding you really can only get from paying attention for decades.
Yeah, I think that's always good advice. That just the more, not so much depth of there's two paths that I see, right? You either get depth of experience in a certain industry, and then you launch a business in that, right? You become a advertising expert, and then you go and launch some sort of ad consultancy or business there.
Right.
Or you go, let me get exposure to loads of different things, and then I sort of understand the fundamentals of how businesses work regardless of the industry, and then you sort of pick your market after that. Interesting. I want to come back to a quote from an article you were featured in. Quote, entrepreneurship is picking what looks best out of a sea of options, trying, iterating based on new data from the trying, and then trying again. End quote. Easy on paper, hard in practice. How do you actually manage that process, like psychologically, practically, tactically?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on kind of a base, or for pulling that out, kind of a base way that I think all improvement works, which is you can be in a place and stick there, or you can be okay with looking at what place you're at, making changes that need to happen, and then trying that again. And I think that applies kind of across life. So in terms of business specifically, if you're I have a good example of this with SpotWalk, my first big business. Right in the beginning, it was just me. I started it by myself, and it was me figuring out the marketing, figuring out the product, and walking dogs. I walked dogs for a year maybe, and I was also doing a lot of the other kind of business building stuff. But there got to a point where I was like walking dogs all day, and then trying to figure out exactly how to continue the business growth with that particular limitation. And it's like, well, I can sit here and walk dogs all day, but I'm never going to be bigger than just me if I don't make a change here. What is the change that I want to make? And I will also credit Mason Hipp, who is my co-founder now and also my husband now, who at that point was basically like, you gotta make a choice here. I see you walking dogs all day. Is that what you like? You're never going to be able to push the business forward if you're just walking the dogs. And he was right. So I think
there's a. Sorry, I was interrupting.
So I think, being able to say, is what I'm doing right now in service of the larger goal? And how is it getting me there? And if it's not in service, or if it's not moving me there, what would?
I love that story, because it's one thing that holds many aspiring entrepreneurs back is they think scale immediately. So, my God, if I think back to me, 2010, first startup, loads of advisors, everyone said, go raise like $1 million. And we're doing that whole VC path. And just thinking about scale and just absolutely no idea what we're doing, inflated ego, zero business experience. And I think even people that haven't got started, it's very easy to go, well, what's the point of starting unless it can, scale from day one and become the next unicorn? And almost every business owner I've spoken to started unscalable. It was walking dogs. It was doing free workshops or selling their time for, a couple of $100 for a week.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Not enough to sustain themselves, but just doing it because they knew that it was giving them the foundation. Do you recommend other people do that? What lessons did you learn from, apart from, I imagine, having an awesome time walking? It's literally one of my dream jobs. A really nice time walking dog. What did you learn from that to sort of set you up for success later on?
Yeah, I really do believe, I'm not sure whose quote this is, but it's one that I think about regularly, which is, in the beginning, do things that do not scale. Because you don't know what works and you don't know what to do until you've done it. And in that position and in my current work, I kind of look at my job in an interesting way. My job is sort of get to a specific level, do the job, figure out what the job is, figure out how to processize it, and then hire to replace myself and go another level up. And I just am continually doing that, and that is how I've been growing things. So, I was walking dogs, I hired to replace myself, and I became marketing manager. And then when I figured out how the marketing worked and the sales worked, I hired that person and then, administration, and I just kept promoting myself. Unfortunately, in startups, sometimes the pay doesn't get any bigger, but
yeah.
But and I'm continuing to do that now. So I'm in this position. I just promoted myself from customer service. We hired a full-time person to do that, and now I'm doing more direct marketing and sales stuff. So it's very interesting to kind of have the outlook of, hey, how can I replace myself? And if I were to replace myself, what would I need to tell the person doing the job so that they're going to do, at least an acceptable version of what I was doing.
If you're enjoying this episode and want to get each shiny new episode straight to whatever platform you use to listen to your podcast, please subscribe using the subscribe button below. Let's talk about solopreneurship versus, general entrepreneurship or founding with a team. Because it sounds like you made a deliberate decision to go from working by yourself to bringing in a team and co-founder. Another quote from you, quote, "What's the biggest misconception that others have around entrepreneurship? That you can do it alone. There's this lone genius cultural concept we're enamored with in America." I mean, I'm a believer in solopreneurship, but I definitely think it has its downsides as well. I think there are pros and cons of both. How did you think about that decision to? Because obviously it's something can make sense for the business, right? Obviously, you become a bottleneck, right? Let's hire someone in so I can do higher value work. But also, there's a personal decision about what do I want to get from it. How did you think about that decision?
Yeah, I definitely believe the more help you have, the further you're going to go. I think that is the case socially. That is the case in business.
How do you when you say further you go? How are you defining that?
Anywhere you want to go. So revenue or life. So if I have help walking dogs, I can go further in the business. If I have help with a co-founder, I can do more things. We can do more things together. So I think that it's not that you can absolutely be a solopreneur. It's about the speed that you want to go, the output that you want to have, and the day-to-day that you want to have. So, there are wonderful things to be said about doing it alone, because then you don't have to agree with anybody or interact with anybody in a way that can be tough. And you don't have to, co-founding is very much like a relationship. You're dating, and then you're like, okay, let's make this official. Let's start the business. And not all relationships work out. It can be very hard to work with other people. So there's value in doing it on your own. And then there are trade-offs. The trade-offs are, how fast can you work? How much can you do? How much support do you have? And I think that if you can find ways to work with others in positive pro-social ways and get that support that it helps you achieve your goals, that's the dream spot. And it's hard to do, but once you've got, and support can come in many ways too. It's not just co-founder or employees. It's also, you can get funding, you can do an accelerator. There's all kinds of wonderful resources for entrepreneurs and startup founders to get additional support. And I highly recommend looking into what's the best support for you.
Yeah, I think the support is the key word. Because, I always find as a solopreneur, it's definitely a lonelier journey because some days you just haven't spoken to anyone apart from my dogs. It's I find that most solopreneurs are particularly the very successful ones. I wouldn't put myself in that bucket. They are very proactive about where they choose to live, who they choose to hang out with. If they don't hang out physically, they hang out online with people, whether it's doing a podcast or regular calls or just going out of the way to have a coffee with someone that's in town, because of the awareness that if you're lacking that team and co-founder, just on an individual level of a human connection is really important, but also that support in terms of just someone to question your business decisions, your assumptions, to bounce ideas with, I think is really important. And personally, I always try to find that socially, so really making sure that social life is there, not just for business reasons, just obviously personal, but just to sort of counteracting the fact that you're putting yourself in this quite unhealthy, potentially lonely situation, I think is really important. I like the phrasing of the lone genius, because I think that's sort of, I wonder whether it's past now or not, but yeah, that's 100%. It's the, that classic Forbes front cover of Mark Zuckerberg or what's her name? The not Zanos founder, Elizabeth Holmes, half of whom are in prison, these founders. But yeah, there's just one person and they lead the way and no one else is behind them, which is almost always a myth.
Given that they're all in prison. Sorry.
Yeah, particularly the fact that they're in prison.
No, I don't think it's positive.
Yeah, it's the fact that that's no, it's a simplification of the narrative. I really liked another phrase of yours, quote, understanding the whole system of a business is like getting a holistic understanding of how the world works. Tell me about that.
We live in a capitalist world, and understanding how money works is kind of an insight into how the entire system is set up, because that is our, we live in a world where value is delineated by a currency, for better or for worse. And if you understand how money works, and by that I mean why people do things, what sort of incentives they have, you're going to understand why things happen in the world and why things happen to you, I think, better, because there is a systems understanding that makes it possible for you to make better predictions, make educated guesses about why people are doing the things that they're doing. I think business is a very good insight into that, because it is a lesson in, hey, how does money work? Why do people do the things they do? Marketing is a good example for that too. Why are people making decisions? And how do I talk to them about those decisions? So I think it's very interesting. And I think if you are running a business, you kind of have a whole view of that, versus if you are working in a much larger business, you're one small piece of that, which, also has excellent value, but it sort of narrows your view on things, because you're not going to be able to understand the whole picture. And I have direct experience of this, because, I have employees, and you hire them specifically to do one thing, one small part of your larger business. And I realized in some ways, I realized the hard way that the task of the employee is not the same as the task of the overseer. And the employee's job is not to know the whole picture. And in fact, it might be better if they don't know the whole picture. But sometimes I wish that I didn't have to explain why we do things. But it's important to explain why we do things the way that we do them. And you start to understand that, without that big picture insight, people can't make the same decisions that have the same outcomes. And they can't be team players in the same way. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I think you're spot on about. I mean, one of the things I thought was just really profound for me running a business was seeing the whole customer journey. I come from a product background where we usually think of product as what happens after you sign up or you pay for something, and it's not. It's holistic because everything touches upon everything else, right? If how you build awareness, with who, what platform, what's their expectation, all the way through to then delivering the value. To be good at product, you need to understand the whole.
Yeah, why are people there? What are they getting out of it?
Yeah, exactly. Like, how do they make buying decisions and things? And I think there's talking about that, coming back to that, understanding money equals understanding humans. I suppose that the example of the sort of starving artist come to mind. Not understanding that just because your artwork might be good, it doesn't necessarily mean it's creating value. It's not valuable to somebody, and having that mindset of just going, look, yeah, for better or for worse, this is the world we live in. We live with humans. They think like this. We have capitalism. That's the system, and that's how you have to sort of adapt and operate.
It's the worst system.
I think is a good perspective
all of the other systems. So it's what we've got.
Yeah.
And exactly. I think we misvalue things all the time with money. I think it's like there are the fact that we pay teachers so poorly, I think, is an incredible misunderstanding of value in our culture. I think our culture very highly weights kind of immediate value rather than longer term value. So that's why you see a lot of this stuff like teachers, social workers, they don't get paid very well. There's not a lot of family support, especially in America. All that stuff is that we're misweighting, we're misvaluing the things that really matter with money.
I suppose even on an individual level, it's like, the fact that people will happily spend money on like ordering pizza in, but they're not going to spend it on going to the gym, or just not even money, go for a walk every day, right? That's healthy. So as you said, sort of it's incentives, it's long-term versus short-term thinking, and sort of all these like messy dealing with humans who are not rational actors stuff going on.
So you're going to learn a lot about that when you're in business, because you have to learn people in order to make, the right decisions on the product 100%. Or whatever you're doing.
Yeah. I find sorry, final comment on it. Sometimes I'll do sales calls with people around, whether it's like helping their career move forward or starting a business, and when they should do the thing, and they know, but there will still be the question of money, which will just get in. And I'm just like, that's just part of the process. It's fine, but I think it's easy to sort of beat yourself up as a business owner. I want to ask a final question before we talk about the you described it as the phoenix from the ashes, the big pivot. You actually went into an ad agency, quit that 10 years ago, zero business experience, but you still jumped in to become an entrepreneur. How did you get started, and what was that trigger to quit your job and go on your own?
Well, it was a few things. When I graduated from college, I was working in an academic field, which I really liked, but didn't pay the bills. Again, misvaluing things. So I went to the next place that, English literature majors go to, which is branding marketing. And I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about things that I didn't like. I did not necessarily like some of the aspects of marketing. I didn't want to do, there were certain things that I didn't feel like I was adding value to the world by doing marketing. Not that marketing itself is a bad field. I don't think it was for me. And And it was important to me that I did something that I thought was at least doing no harm. Like I wanted to hit that. And at best, bringing actual value, doing helpful things. I think, one of the things that I like to say when people ask me what I do is I like to build tech companies that help humans. I want to bring value to the world and do things that are useful as opposed to maybe not not so good for our societies. That was sort of the impetus of like, all right, well, maybe I don't want to be in branding. And then there was also kind of the very personal aspect of I wasn't really enjoying the day-to-day of my job. I didn't really like the place I was working. And I...
Do you think that was more of a character trait of, some people consider themselves as just like, I'm not good at working for other people, for example.
No, I think a lot of people
was that
think
or
that,
wrong place?
And I think I thought that too. I think I know I had said the word, I'm not a very good employee. And I think that's not true. I think it's more accurate to say I wasn't aligned with my integrity. I didn't think I was doing the right thing. And I think I sabotaged that a little bit because I was like, I don't think I'm doing what I want to be doing. I'm also going to give credit here again to my now husband, who basically saw me every day. Like, we saw each other at lunch because he lived nearby, and I would cry. And he's like, you don't have to do this. You can do anything. And he was a great inspiration to me because he actually, I don't think he ever had a job. He left college and he's been running businesses since he was born, I think. So he was a successful entrepreneur, and we were just dating at the time, but he was like, look, you can do anything that you want to. Witness. I make my own schedule. I make a lot more money than you. Like all of that stuff. I was like, oh, this is possible. So he made it clear to me that it was possible in a way that I don't think I had tumbled to before. So I will credit him with that. And I will also credit him with being like, okay, well, here's how I got started. Here are things that you can do. What kind of business do you want to run? And I was like, well, I just want to hang out with dogs. And that was sort of the impetus. He was like, well, then stop doing the work that you don't like and start doing the work that you do like. And he was right.
So I'm smiling because we're so good at creating mental prisons for ourselves, and just asking that simple question here, you don't have to do this, you can literally do anything, is so simple and obvious, but obviously at the time
feel obvious. Yeah,
not obvious.
I think our cultural narrative is such that we are told that here's the lane, walk down the lane. And I think there's also a cultural narrative of like the midlife crisis and that, which is you've walked so far down the lane and you didn't realize 30 forks back that you didn't want to go down this road. And just because we were told that this is the road that you go down, doesn't mean it was the right one for you. And again, you need a lot of support and you need resources, and not everybody has those, and I was lucky to have them.
Yeah, I'm definitely lucky to have that supporting voice at the right time. But I mean, I think there's also a good lesson there for people. Find a partner who's firstly a really good entrepreneur, but the more accessible one might be just getting started with something that you enjoy. If it's, hey, I like hanging out with dogs, why don't I just start dog walking, pay the bills, get something, or at least having something in your life that excites you.
Yeah, and I knew I didn't want to be like a dog walker, but I did know that it was something that I could build. I could build something bigger from it and do something that I thought was fun.
By the way, some of these dog care places make like $500,000 a year. Small couples businesses. I mean, it's a serious business. We always go after these glamorous like tech and AI stuff. It's like there are some really nice
bread and butter
brick and mortar businesses that the founders probably absolutely love and get enormous joy from as well. Let's talk about the new business. So I want to say from the ashes, it's still running in some form, but you're building on many of your learnings, and Slides with Friends is born. Talk to me about firstly that decision to how you talked about pivoting or persisting, and then how you came up with Slides with Friends, how you got to your first customers.
So I think, like many good businesses, it was born out of a real need, a direct need. The last company, we went all remote, and all of a sudden, all of our team meetings were on Zoom. Everything that used to happen in office was no longer happening in office. Our onboarding and our trainings went remote, so we also had to do like everything. We used to do group onboardings of new members, and we weren't able to do any of that. We weren't able to do staff meetings, anything like that. So we were like, we need something to make this better. We need something to help keep the team connected while we're also doing the hard work of whatever we need to do during our meetings. We need ways to onboard our new people and ensure that they're retaining the information and quiz them on the information. And also, it was kind of a little side benefit. It was quarantine, so we were like, what can we do with our friends to how can we still have a social connection with our friends? And we actually ended up starting up we called it Quarantine Quizzo. And it ran from 2020 weekly until last year. We were doing it. So we were also using the platform for this. And so we built Slides with Friends specifically to address these needs of connection when you can't have it in person, and just connection overall, even when we are together, because we'd started to do Quarantine Quizzo in person. And it was born of a real business need and a real human need. And that kind of informed the product from the beginning. And I think that a lot of the stuff that we have that our competitors don't have is that sort of hyper focus on human connection and the value that that brings to an organization, a classroom, or friends.
Yeah, I think it's it's bringing $40,000 per month, and which is a lot of money. I think particularly in a busy market where there is a norm for products to be free, right? Or PowerPoint, right? In some form it's free or included in some sort of package. Plus, have these amazing AI-driven tools like Tome, I think, is a great example. You've also got the challenge of lock-in, right? The fact that if my company is using PowerPoint, everyone is using PowerPoint, and we're not going to talk about bringing something new in. How have you? So obviously that focus is really important. Is there anything else that you think really has driven success over the last 4 years with Slides with Friends?
In terms of like differentiators, or
sorry, yeah. Let's talk about standing out and being able. Let's talk about psychology there. Actually, like how do you get over some of those challenges and both differentiate but position it in a way that really gets people interested and ultimately willing to pay for it?
What a good question. We're doing that right now, in fact. So we are in process of rebuilding our website, which is a big undertaking. We built the first one. I would give it currently, I would say we're at a 7 out of 10, maybe 6.5, in terms of the current website. And a lot of what we've been doing, both with the new marketing site that we've just hired an agency to build and with the product itself, is paying attention to what really makes us different and what really brings the value. And I think that what that is we have built this platform specifically to be something that can bring enjoyment and connection, and is not just a static PowerPoint. Like, you can run as many static PowerPoints as you want. The more you talk at people, the less they're going to listen. The more you involve them and allow them to interact with you, the more they're going to enjoy it, retain it, and get value out of it. Your outcomes are going to be better. I just did a long swath of case studies, which was very interesting. So I talked to a lot of our users, and they were saying some very interesting things about, I use this when I know I have to have a hard meeting, and I want to kind of lighten the mood. Like, we're going to tell people they have to come back to the office, and I want to do an icebreaker before that, and then afterward I want to do a check-in, to make it easier, not just on them, but on me. And when we leave, I want them to not feel negatively about the experience. And Slides with Friends is able to do that. I use it to keep people, to cushion things and to keep people enjoying what we're doing rather than having it feel like a slog or hard work. And the reason that works is because we bring in laughter, we bring in connection, we bring in participation and interaction. And I think that's our big, like,
it's super interesting. So so actually, so in their mind, this is a different category of product, right? It is not a presentation builder. It's very much about a tool, some way of just fostering interaction.
Right. So there's like a static PowerPoint. There is like dedicated team building event that you can do, and then there's like training and learning or speaking. And I think it's at the intersection of those things where real team building, real value and productivity happen, where real teamwork happens. And our goal is to bring all of those things together so that you can have the middle of that Venn diagram where people are working and learning, retaining, enjoying and connecting, and also getting your mission, understanding your mission and aligning with your goals. It's kind of that middle sweet spot Venn diagram.
Oh, interesting. You got your first customers through pay-per-click. Why did you choose that channel? Like, what was the thinking?
I think PPC is a really good testing tool. And it's also easy to light money on fire. So you have to, you talked about a little bit, how do you make your first dollar, right? How do you know whether this is something that someone will pay you for? Because you can build all day and no one will give you a cent. Or you can build like just a tiny nugget of something that is super valuable to someone and people will give you a lot of money. You don't have to build very much at all, if you're lucky. Not many of us are that lucky anymore. But the value of CPC is that it can give you an idea of, hey, if I can get this in front of people, which is the larger marketing question, will they pay for it? So you can pay to put it in front of somebody and see what happens. And you really do have to like work on your messaging there, and that's a big part of it. But if you can get the messaging right, will someone give you $1? And that is a proof of concept that you absolutely need in the beginning of a business. And that is a thing that if you can figure out how to get the return higher than the investment, you can print money. We are not running CPC now, but that's mainly because we found better channels and organic traffic is really, really working for us. So free, which is nice. And that makes our margins, which are already fairly good, even better. But I recommend it as kind of a testing tool to see if you can get someone to give you your first dollar.
Yeah, I think it's just that principle of test extremely quickly. You can use personal network for that. If you've got some sort of following, like send it to your newsletter, post it on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever it is. And if not, and in conjunction, go to pay-per-click just to see what happens and see if there's interest there. So your main drive is now content marketing. How did you manage that process? I think it's content marketing it's a long game. It's also easy, I think, to sort of try and do loads, all the platforms and then spread yourself a bit too thin. How have you managed building that? Or any tips and tactics for building a content marketing strategy? And how have you thought about sort of platform choice, for example?
What do you mean by platform? I mean, mostly it's organic. Google search for us is our main content marketing.
Sorry, yeah. So okay. So sorry. Why specifically when you're doing content? Why did you follow the blogger SEO approach versus putting articles on, I don't know, LinkedIn or posts on
the answer
Instagram?
to that is we probably should be doing a bunch of platforms. It's all just throughput and resources. But for us, it's a lot of SEO work. We're very good in-house at this. My co-founder, Mason, is extremely good, and I am medium good. We use tools and we do a lot of research, and a lot of it is just very metric driven. So, you want to find the right keywords that have the right amount of search volume and the lower amount of difficulty to rank for. You want to write a good article that is actually helpful for people around that keyword. And then you pray. And the more value that the article brings in theory, the higher search results you're going to show up in. And we've been lucky to be able to grab lower difficulty keywords early in this busy market because we've been able to sort of have a hyper focus on who our users are and what they're looking for. And I think, so it's just kind of a combination of having the resources and the ability to figure out who our customers are, what they want to read, how they're looking for those things, and then writing those things and publishing them. And then we have been able to come sort of organically to the top of search results for that in a converty way. So that's all the trick is that the content.
There's such a key point there. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. Also, I love that just by being so focused, you're basically finding this underserved niche there's less friction. People are more actively searching for what you provide.
I wouldn't even call it underserved.
And then coming into your funnel specifically for looking.
It's less underserved and more we're talking about it in a way that they are more likely to connect with, because there are a ton of tools out there that do
reframing.
But we are able to talk about it in a way that people are looking for.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take to get results with the SEO
that's strategy? A really good question. A long time. Content is a very slow moving beast. So I would say you can do a bunch of research, write your article, publish it, and then give it 6 months to see if it's going to have any traction at all. So we kind of do an ongoing. Think of it like gold prospecting. You go to a river and you sift. Is there anything here? Okay, let me pick out these little nuggets and find the ones that are, the biggest, and try to trace them back and improve what you're doing and getting. So you're just looking everywhere for the pocket of gold. And when you find the pocket, which is the right blog article that's hitting the right audience, and you want to improve that. So, we'll go back, we'll add a video, we'll rewrite it a little bit better, we'll update it. And you cast a wide net, you sift a wide amount of water, and you make a lot of blogs, and only a few of them are real gold. And then you want to focus on those ones. So, we have probably 10 to 30 really high performing blog posts, and we have hundreds of blog posts. So it's prospecting, it's guessing. And the better the ones you put out, and the more you put out, the more likely you are to hit a vein of gold. I don't know if that metaphor works, but
the gold prospecting works well. And I think that's true of all platforms. Right? You try 100 things, and maybe 10 will work and bring in traffic. I want to talk about hiring, because you're currently scaling from 2 founders to a full-time team. Are there any learnings or anything you're doing differently this time versus last time?
Yeah. I learned a lot of things the hard way last time. And I think one of the big things that we learned is part of the reason I think Slides with Friends is high value and is working so well. It's because if you don't focus and create team culture, it will be created for you, and not always in a way that you like. So the bigger the team gets, the further away each person on a tier gets from you and your understanding of the mission. And if they don't understand the mission, they can't do a good job. So aligning them with your mission, creating a culture where they can connect and talk to you and to, whoever is their direct reporting, and making sure that those lines of communication are open, that you're hearing from everybody in a way that is not overwhelming for you as leadership. Incredibly important. And that's a lot of what we're trying to do with this, where, if you have a one-to-many scenario, hearing from everybody in an organized way is a big part of, what an interactive audience response tool can do. So yeah, I learned you have to create your culture or things won't go well. So this time, as we grow, we are being very mindful to make sure people understand why we're doing the things that we're doing, why it's important, where they fit in, and why it matters that they do the right job and a good job, and what they're bringing to the world, what sort of value and meaningfulness they're bringing. I think I just saw a study that was very interesting about how the lack of meaningfulness is a large problem in work today. People don't feel like they are important. They don't feel like they do.
I think 7 out of 10 employees are dissatisfied or unhappy with their job.
And that's a lot. I think it's easy to feel unimportant if you're a small piece of a larger thing. I remember working in agencies, and I remember working for large clients, and I would do something and then I would give it to them and they would say, okay, thanks. My boss would get paid and I would get a paycheck, but I would never see that thing again. I would never know what it was for or why I was doing it. It felt dehumanizing. It felt I was disconnected from the output that I was doing. And I think it's easy to have that happen to employees. And it's hard to keep them from feeling that way. It's hard to keep them in the loop of the bigger picture. And so I'm very mindfully trying to do that here. And that's mission alignment, and that's connection with coworkers, and it's connection with leadership. And it's also enjoyment and fun. Making people feel like their day-to-day is good rather than a slog.
Yeah, that's a good mission to have. What does success look like for you with this? Well, not just with this business, but generally as an entrepreneur?
That's a big question. A few things. I think as I just kind of made mention of, I think that your day-to-day is your life. So if you enjoy your day-to-day, you can enjoy your life. I would like to build a business that I like building every day. I don't think there's an end point that until when I get to this point, I will be happy. I think that's a recipe for never being happy. I think that, hey, I like this particular thing that I'm working on right now. I'm enjoying it. I think that's success. This moment is success. I think so. And that's another reason why I like entrepreneurship, is because I have so much control over what I do on a day-to-day. It's also controlled by what the market forces need and what the business needs. But I get to pick from those things. What do I think is the most valuable, and how much do I enjoy doing it? And if I want to do it, then I'll do it. And if I don't, I'll outsource it. But I also enjoy those decisions, and figuring out what to do next is a really important and fun part of my job. So I think that's success. I think, revenue is nice. It enables great things like my kids' childcare and health insurance and that sort of stuff. So that sort of security and safety is success for me. And yeah, enjoying things. That's good.
I think that's very good enough advice. Just the enjoyment part. It's always difficult as an entrepreneur. You're always thinking ahead and worrying about what can go wrong and how to think strategically. But it's something that I have struggled with. But now in I think 10 years of work trying to get to a good sort of place with, I think finally realised that you have to enjoy the journey. I think as we move towards a conclusion, I want to ask some quick fire questions. What one piece of advice would you give an aspiring entrepreneur to get started?
To get started with any business or their first
with their first business?
Start from the end and work backward. Look at where you want to go and then figure out the steps that came before it. Back to where you are now. Think big picture. Think, how do my base principles and that end goal line up? And will I like it? But plan backward. It's really the only way, because otherwise it's just a sea of possibilities and there's too many options.
Yeah, I love that. Clear on the vision and then work out the steps to get there. Second question. When for somebody trying to get their first sale, so let's say that they might have a newsletter or a product, but are scared of asking for that first, are you going to pay me money for it? What advice would you give there to get them over the line?
I mean, the same advice that everybody gives. Know your user. Who are the people that could benefit from your solution, and what do they want? What do they need? Talk to your user. Talk to your potential users, and listen when they tell you that the thing that you built isn't quite right. Yeah, when people are willing to pay for something, it's going to be something that is valuable for them. So you need to create something that has direct value, and that's how you can get people to give you their money.
Awesome, Cecilia. Really, really enjoyed that. I've got a lot of notes and things to think about for my own journey. Is there anywhere people can follow you, find the website, etc.?
Yeah, we are at slideswith.com. That's our interactive presentation product. Highly recommend trying that out. It's a lot of fun. I think I've tried to make the case for that, at least. I'm on LinkedIn and X, but I'm really never on there. So I would just say slideswith.com.
Slideswith.com. I will share that in the notes as well. Thanks so much, Cecilia. Thank you for listening to another episode of Refounders. If you enjoyed this episode and want to get each shiny new episode straight to whatever platform you use to listen to your podcast, please subscribe using the subscribe button below. If you're feeling generous, why not share with a friend?